Greetings, Quester. The Meddlesome Meeples present Tome Talk with Richard and Matt.
So welcome to this episode of Tome Talk. Last time I spoke about the Caiaphas Cain books. This time Richard's got a book for us to share. Richard, tell us about it.
Okay, well this is Lathe of Heaven by Ursula Le Guin. And it is a classic sci-fi novel, although Ursula Le Guin did tend to do a lot of fantasy ones as well. One of hers was Tales of Earthsea, which I've seen as the Studio Ghibli version of that film. So, but this one is classic sci-fi, and it's actually in the style. Well, it's kind of very reminiscent of books by Philip K. Dick, and by that I mean she creates a very kind of detailed futuristic world, but then tears it down. And that is very much something that Philip K. Dick did a lot, because a lot of his novels were all about kind of insanity or the reality changing, and you're not really knowing what's happening. So this book, a very similar topic, and it's actually about someone in the future called George Orr, and he gets forced to go to a psychiatrist because he has been taking drugs to keep himself awake. And the reason he's been doing this is because he is afraid to go to sleep. And the reason for that is that when he dreams, he changes the world. And it can be in some quite major ways. Now, I don't want there to be any spoilers, so I'll just tell you about the first time, the incident that he speaks about being the first time that he noticed the world changed when he dreamed. And this was when there was a woman living with him at his house, or like a woman, I think she was a member of the family, older than him anyway. And she kept being quite forward with him, like making kind of advances on him, and it made him very uncomfortable. And basically he wished her away. And when he went to sleep that night, he had a dream that this woman had died in a car accident. And it was very vivid, and he remembered his mum getting the telegram and crying, and him feeling sorry for his mum. But then when he woke up, he found that she had died in a car accident, and not only was she gone, but it had happened 6 weeks ago. So when he had gone to sleep that night, she'd been alive, but when he woke up in the morning, she had been dead for 6 weeks, and he had the memories of that as well. So obviously this was very scary for him. He went to the psychiatrist to try and get it sorted out so that he could have normal sleep, normal dreams that don't change the world. And really, it kind of carries on in the world changes in much bigger ways as it goes on. And one interesting aspect of it is that the psychiatrist is actually hypnotising him and kind of suggesting different dreams that he might have, just to kind of test these things. It's meant to be his treatment. But then each time Mr. Raw goes to the psychiatrist has become a little bit more important, has a slightly nicer office. Yeah. I think he ends up like being in charge of the World Health Organization or something like that. And so yeah, you can see that something a bit underhanded is going on. But yeah,
which actually makes me respect the psychiatrist even more.
Yeah, actually he is a very good character actually. So yeah, as far as characters go in classic sci-fi, a lot of them are quite decisive people, aren't they? And yeah, this is no exception really. So yeah, there's a lot in here because of the different concepts that turn up during the different ways that the world can be, depending on which way you dream it, which changes that he enacts during these times when he has these dreams that affect reality. So yeah, it's just a bit of a more interesting take on a classic sci-fi, because rather than being about concepts about technology that could be invented or different types of like ethical dilemmas, I suppose it is kind of ethical, but there's just a lot of psychological themes in there. So that's why I thought this was quite an interesting book for that reason. And you also found out a few things, didn't you? When you
actually, one of the things that kind of amused me a little bit, more than it should have done, was the fact that the title of the book, The Lathe of Heaven, it actually was inspired from something in a book by Chuang Tzu. But then it turned out to be a mistranslation, because there were no lathes in heaven at the time of Chuang Tzu. So it should have been titled something else, really. But there's been a few adaptations of this book. There was one back in 1980 that was with PBS called The Lathe of Heaven, and that was in that one. Le Guin herself was actually involved in this, so she was quite happy with the way it went. And but then there was a later version in 2002 which she wasn't involved in, which from all accounts disregards a lot of the plot and some of the characters as well, so it wasn't as faithful to the original book.
Yeah. And then you found there was a theatre version as well, didn't you?
That's right. There was a stage adaptation of this, and that ran through the month of June in 2012, and that was in New York City. One of the New York theatres ran that. Yeah. So it's been adapted a few times. And
as soon as you told me about that theatre thing, I thought that would work really well with this.
Yeah, it's the kind of thing that I think could almost have most of the play just him and the therapist, couldn't you?
Yeah, and then just describing how the world's changed each time and freaking out about it. Yeah,
maybe we would have to do an adaptation one day.
Yeah, Meddlesome play.
So this it's definitely one that I think we said we both would enjoy.
I did enjoy it. I was reading it when you came up with the idea of us doing Tome Talk, which was quite a few months ago, and we were planning on being Meddlesome Meeples. So, and as soon as you talked about us talking about a book each time, I mean, I thought I do want to talk about this one because I was enjoying it at the time. And one part of this kind of a kind of a genre is that there's so many different concepts in it, because like with Philip K. Dick books, with them changing reality so often, you get so many different concepts in the same book. Normally this would have to be divided up into a few different short stories, but it can be the same narrative with the same characters getting kind of even themselves changed with each different iteration of how the world is, and I thought she did it very well. And
there was some quite interesting like social commentaries that come through the book as well, wasn't there? Without going into spoilers, there was some very interesting things that happen as a result of his dreams with regards to race, for example.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah, I can't really say exactly what it was without there being spoilers. That's the trouble, because it's a bit late on in the book. But that is quite an interesting little exploration that there is in that chapter of the book. So I would recommend it for classic sci-fi. It might be one that you haven't actually read, and I do hope to, in my my sections of Tome Talk, talk about some more sci-fi, including classic sci-fi, which I'm wanting to get to read a bit more of, because there are so many different concepts available, and you can see kind of where they came from as well. Because a lot of the time in modern sci-fi it will be, although obviously the technology will be a little bit different, because obviously we've got more now than could have been envisioned back like in the 50s and 60s and 70s, but a lot of the core concepts have been around for decades, haven't they, really? So it's good to see where they came from.
I do think that the more you read classic sci-fi, the more you appreciate the modern science fiction genre, because you can see where a lot of the inspiration for films and books and the ideas of those came from. You think about Asimov. Asimov has had such a huge influence over sci-fi. One of the things though about Tome Talk as well, we were saying earlier, was we both tend to read, even when we like the same genres, because we're both big fans of science fiction, but we tend to read very different books within that genre.
Yeah.
I think one of the few areas where we have real genuine crossover is that we're both huge fans of Terry Pratchett's Discworld books.
Yeah.
Beyond that, we tend to read very much different things a lot of the time. Though we
Yeah.
would probably like what each other reads, but we just
Yeah.
it's such a huge genre that it's good to have different perspectives.
But that does help for Tome Talk.
That does.
Because we can talk about a wider variety of books. So.
Yeah.
So that is this week's Tome Talk. So thank you for joining us for that. And Matt will have a book next time to talk about. So until then, stay meddlesome.
Farewell, Quester. To find out about other productions by the Meddlesome Meeples, then check out our channel or rendezvous with us at meddlesomemeeples.com. Until next time, Quester, farewell and keep thine axe sharp.